Minersville School District versus Gobitis is a Supreme Court case in which the First Amendment of freedom of religion through the constitutional point of view is not guaranteed. The court's final decision affected how many citizens interpreted their civil liberties during the early 1940s. The ruling created an immense controversy between different religious groups and American laws, whether or not American patriotism is paramount to the religious beliefs that contradict American statutes. The Minersville School District versus Gobitis decision uncovers the truth that American citizens will never completely understand, that the amendments are not absolute, and they are apprehended in different ways as society progresses. In the 1940s, the Supreme Court agreed to hear a case regarding mandatory flag salutes in schools. Jehovah's Witnesses during this time were seen as Nazi sympathizers for refusing to salute the flag. Although the majority of witnesses never had a close relationship with Germany, their actions were seen as unpatriotic and, in a way, advocative to the Nazi forces by refusing to salute the American flag during Germany's rise to power. However, Jehovah's Witnesses were not the only people who refused to venerate the flag. Since the Pledge of Allegiance was adopted in the year 1862, many citizens thought, including the first President of the United States, George Washington, that compelling people to reiterate the pledge was an insult to their love and freedom for their country. Refusing to salute the American flag was an action that had not originated in America, but in Germany during the 1930s. In Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler had demanded that all Jehovah's Witnesses were prohibited from rejecting to give acknowledgement to their flag during Nazi flag salutes in schools and in separate Nazi ceremonies. As a continuous result of Jehovah's refusal, approximately 10,000 Jehovah's Witnesses were transported to concentration camps where a horde of witnesses were put to death. Joseph Rutherford, the American Jehovah's Witness leader, was the first to hear about the deaths in the concentration camps. Rutherford then sent a radio announcement that criticized American flag salutes and told all Jehovah's Witnesses to refuse to give into their flag-demanding orders. Jehovah's had a strong feeling that honoring the flag was a form of idolatry, and that by reciting the pledge, it was exalting evil forces, even to go as far as the country's flags are images of Satan in the secular world. As numerous fears of a new uprising war of Nazi Germany began to derive attention, about 12 of the 48 states had created laws requiring for mandatory flag salutes in state schools. Lillian and William Gobitis, who were two practicing Jehovah's Witnesses, lived in Minersville, Pennsylvania, where 90% of its residents were Catholics. Jehovah's bitterness towards Catholicism and their door-to-door preaching combined to make witnesses highly unpopular in Minersville. After hearing Rutherford's announcement, many witnesses, including the two children, began to refuse to recite the Pledge of Allegiance as a part of their daily activities. From that day on, young Jehovah's Witnesses and their families were treated more unpleasantly in schools and in public places.
The cops beat you up. The police would join and confront witnesses coming in from out of town and physically beat them up. I've read stories of children of being beaten by the teacher. Salute this flag. And they beat the kid. How old is he? 3rd grade, 5th grade? And he wouldn't salute.
He came home one day and said, I stopped saluting. He said, the teacher tried to put up my arm, but I held onto my pocket. So the next day I went and explained what I was going to do and why. I was prepared for a recrimination. And she said, Lillian, oh, you are a dear child, but not the class. When they saw, they were so angry. And when I came to school, they said, here comes Jehovah, and the pebbles were flying.
As Lillian said, there was a sense of happiness for being courageous and standing up for their beliefs. Many Americans were shocked at the way Jehovah's refused. For centuries, men and women had seen the flag as a symbol of freedom, for which men and women voluntarily gave up their lives for the betterment of their nation. Charles E. Rudebush, the Minersville School District superintendent, became angry when he heard of the Gobitis' actions. Neither the local school board or the state legislature had enacted a law that required students to recite the pledge. Therefore, Rudebush knew he could not punish the children lawfully. Rudebush then tried to convince the school's Board of Education to pass a resolve that required all students to salute the American flag, and that any instance of refusal shall be regarded as an act of insubordination and shall be dealt with accordingly. Once the school board put the resolution into effect, Charles immediately expelled the Gobitis children from their school. In a letter to the Minersville School District's Board of Education, William wrote, I do not salute the American flag because I have promised to do the will of God. William's reason for refusing to salute the American flag is not because he dislikes his country, but is because he loves and trusts Jehovah more. William is determined to obey Jehovah's commandments, even if his belief contradicts with what the law or others say. On May 3, 1937, the father of the Gobitis children, Walter, called a case against the Minersville School Board and the superintendent. Walter said that the due process rights of his children, which was a clause of the 14th Amendment, were violated by the school district. He also argued that the rights under the 8th Amendment were violated by expelling Lillian and William from their school as a cruel and unusual punishment. The First Amendment played an essential role in the case, in the regard to making a law respecting an establishment of religion. The First Amendment had directly protected the rights of the children, that no one could prohibit their free exercise of religion. The children were both exercising their religious beliefs that Jehovah was the true God, and that doing anything with the intentions of saluting the flag was against Jehovah's word. The Gobitis family won both their two lower court cases. In Judge Maris's opinion, it held that the actions of the two children did not harm or put in danger their fellow classmates' rights, properties, health, or morals. Judge Maris summarized his opinion with stating that the two children were much like the pioneers that came in search of a new land, that the children refused in the hope that a new change could be the panacea for success and freedom of their consciences in the world. The Supreme Court deeply considered looking into the numerous clouds of uprising war in Europe, and it decided to hear a case that had begun a clash between conscientious witnesses and patriotic members of the United States. The central question in the Supreme Court case was whether compulsory flag salutes were against the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause, and what would the court rule when idolatry encountered patriotism. On June 3, 1940, the Supreme Court ruled an 8-1 decision that ruled in favor of the Minersville School Board. Clearly, this was a complete shock to the Jehovah's Witnesses and a change of viewpoints of thousands of witnesses towards the Constitution. The Supreme Court stated that national unity was the basis of national security, that the flag was an important symbol that represented national unity. By reciting the pledge, it allowed children to become more attached to the United States organizations. Justice Harlan Stone was the only dissenter in the case that stated in his opinion that the state seeks to coerce these children to express a sentiment which violates their deepest religious convictions. The very essence of liberty is the freedom of an individual from compulsion as to what he shall think and what he shall say, at least to where compulsion is to bear false witness to his religion. Stone says that these laws and rules are forcing children to show off a certain attitude that strictly goes against their commandments, for which they have listened to and obeyed their entire lives. He defines that the quintessence of liberty is the freedom from pressure, so someone can say what he truly believes rather than be forced to reiterate what is inappropriate in their mind. Stone strongly believes that forcing an individual to salute is not the only way to teach them to be patriotic, that only when the person's actions show a clear and present danger, punishment is ethical. The aftermath of the Minersville case was no easy obstacle for Jehovah's Witnesses to overcome. Along with being traitors and Nazi sympathizers, Jehovah's were beaten severely, tarred and feathered, maimed, or shot to death until they agreed to give honor to the flag. Even at times, police officers would join in or stand around and watch as these inhumane acts were being done to them.
One night, my father got a telephone threat, and he said, "Wally, if you don't call the Philadelphia Inquirer and tell them you will now salute, there will be a mob coming, and we don't know what will happen to you and your children."
Although the Gobitis family lost their Supreme Court case, this was not the last time where a flag case would be brought up to the Supreme Court. West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett was the case that reversed the Gobitis decision. In a 6-3 final opinion, the Supreme Court voted against the compulsory flag salutes and declared that the American law requiring an individual to salute the American flag was against the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. The court wrote with the majority decision by Justice Robert H. Jackson, "If there is any fixed star on constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein." Jackson believes that our Constitution secures that its officials, regardless of position, cannot directly or specifically explain what is supposed to be considered correct in politics, nationalism, religion, or in opinions of others. The decision to reverse the Gobitis case is something to never forget. Generally, it would take decades for a case's decision to be reversed. Even several of the justices that ruled in both cases said that the Gobitis decision was wrongly decided. Perhaps it was the concerns about upcoming war that swayed the judges' opinions. They believed their thoughts of premature patriotism was essential to protect the country from its perils that could potentially threaten the country. The issue in the Gobitis case was whether religious objectors have a free exercise clause right to get an exemption from general applicable rules. Barnett involved the same facts as Gobitis with different legal theory, that everyone, religious or not, has a free speech clause right to not say the pledge. Also, the efforts of Germany were failing during the Barnett case. Therefore, even at war, our country was better prepared to take threats than they had 3 years before. The result of the Barnett case paved the way for future generations. Today, Jehovah's and other Americans are not forced to salute the flag because they are protected by the First Amendment, that no person can restrict their worship, and no law can be made restricting their rights to religion. Also, they can believe and not participate if they find honoring the flag against their religious beliefs or other personal preferences.